People have always been drawn to the idea of haunted houses, especially during Halloween. While we love scaring ourselves, many of these haunted houses include a terrifying warning of the worst of human nature. When you dig deep and discover the true nature of haunted houses, you'll see just how terrifying these houses are with their backstories. So let's take a look at 5 real, terrifying haunted houses. Some are still standing, welcoming guests, while others merely reflect on their past. The Ferry Plantation. The Ferry Plantation house, located at 4136 Cheswick Lane in Virginia Beach, Virginia, is a brick house built in 1642 by Seville Gaston to transport passengers on the Lynnhaven River to the nearby county courthouse and to visit plantations along the canal. The ferry, which made 11 stops along the river, was signaled by a gun. The current house was built by slaves in 1830. It has served as a plantation, courtyard, school, post office, museum, education center, and summer camp, and is well known for being haunted by 11 spirits. People who believe in paranormal activity visit the plantation to conduct research and get proof. Spirits have been seen at the top of the stairs painting, including those who people killed in an 1810 shipwreck at the ferry landing. Some ghosts have been seen more often than others. Sally Rebecca Walk, who mourns her fiancé, the falling soldier. The lady in white, who reportedly died in 1826 of a broken neck from falling down the stairs. And artist Thomas Williamson, a one-time owner of the house. Some tourists claim to have heard the sounds of chains being dragged, presumably from the days of the ancient courtroom. In 1990, a group of citizens saved the house from being demolished, and in 1996, the city of Virginia Beach and the Friends of the Ferry Plantation house began renovating it. In 2004, the home was designated a Victorian Historic Landmark, and in 2005, it was added to the National Register of Historic Places. The Molly Brown House. Margaret Tobin, also known as Margaret Brown, was an American philanthropist, activist, and socialite who earned the nickname the Unsinkable Molly Brown for her role in the narrative of the Titanic. She was born on July 18, 1867, in Hannibal, Missouri. Brown was not born into wealth. She grew up with her parents, along with 6 other children in a low-income household. When Margaret turned 18, she traveled to Colorado with 2 of her siblings in 1886 in the hopes of finding success in the mining sector. She made money sewing for a local department store until she met James Joseph Brown, a mining superintendent. She fell in love and married him in September of 1886. The couple struggled financially until they discovered gold in 1893 when James was offered a stake in the Ibex Mining Company. Margaret, despite her newfound wealth, was not the type of woman to sit around and do nothing. She was constantly active in her community, assisting miners and their families, improving local schools, establishing a women's club, and even running for a state senate seat in Colorado, which was unheard of at the time. Margaret Brown was a powerful woman ahead of her time, and her name should never be forgotten by history. The Molly Brown House, designed by architect William A. Lang in the late 1800s, is a Queen Anne-style construction that combines different famous Victorian forms. The house was formerly owned by Mary and Isaac Large, who was forced to sell it due to financial difficulties. In 1894, J.J. Brown paid $30,000 for the house. The house has become famous for being haunted. People have reported seeing light bulbs coming undone unexpectedly. There's a spirit of a woman who appears to be Molly Brown, who is seen around the house in a Victorian gown, occasionally moving the furniture in her home and frightening visitors. Following Margaret Molly Brown's death in 1932, the building was used as a man's rooming house, a Hull House settlement, and later apartments for rent. A sad part of American history recalls that enslaved blacks were held in attached quarters, as well as the usual in New Orleans at that period. The slaves of Lalaurie were kept in deplorable conditions even by slave treatment standards and were frequently malnourished. Madame Lalaurie was known in public to be kind to black people, despite how she abused them in private. Over time, reports about the Lalaurie's family's slave maltreatment grew, prompting an official investigation in 1832. A local attorney went to the mansion to look into reports of slave cruelty by the Lalauries. He claimed he discovered no misconduct. However, mistreatment stories persisted, including experiences shared with Harriet Martineau, a noble 19th century English writer who visited the city in 1833. According to one tale, Madame Lalaurie became upset when a 12-year-old slave girl named Leah accidentally caught a snag while combing Lalaurie's hair. Lalaurie whipped the girl around the room until she jumped off the balcony to her death. Lalaurie was found guilty of severely abusing her slaves and forced to lose her 9 surviving slaves after Leah was buried behind the estate grounds. The slaves were taken away and planned to be auctioned off, but Lalaurie persuaded a relative to buy them and return them to the mansion. A fire broke out in the kitchen of the Lalaurie mansion on April 10, 1834. When the police and fire marshals came, they discovered the family cook, a 70-year-old lady, shackled to the stove. She later admitted that she ignited the fire on purpose as a suicide attempt because she was afraid that Madame Lalaurie would take her to a torture chamber as punishment. The cook claimed that anyone who was taken upstairs to the room never returned. This account, which was publicized in the local newspaper the next day, prompted people to demand that the torture chamber be inspected. When the Lalauries refused to let them in, they broke down the doors and discovered 7 mangled slave bodies. Some were hanged, some had their limbs severed, and yet others were missing body parts. More than 4,000 New Orleans people witnessed the gruesome public viewing of the surviving slaves at a local jail. Several dead, including one kid, were eventually discovered buried across the house grounds by investigators. Madame Lalaurie and her family managed to escape from the mansion just as the mob took control. It's said that the poor souls of the murdered slaves haunt the mansion. The entire ordeal was a devastating tragedy. May their souls rest in peace. The Bell Witch Farm. The Bell Witch narrative revolves around the John Bell family of Red River, Tennessee, and the haunting they experienced between 1817 and 1821. One day in 1817, while surveying his cornfield, John Bell came across a strange-looking animal sitting in the corner of a corn row. Bell was taken back by the look of the animal, which had the body of a dog and the head of a rabbit. Within an instant, the creature vanished. This was the creature's first documented sighting. Bell didn't think much about this until after he had dinner with his family. The family began hearing pounding sounds on the outer walls of their log home that evening. Bell and his boys dashed outside, hoping to catch whatever was making the noise, but they saw no one. The Bell children began waking up scared in the weeks that followed, complaining that rats were eating at their bedpost. Soon after, the children began complaining of an invisible witch yanking their bed covers and tossing their pillows onto the floor. The witch was even more horrible to the family slaves, taunting them, beating them, and refusing to let them into the house. Dean, a Bell slave, claimed to have encountered the witch several times, and that she frequently appeared in the image of a giant black dog or wolf, sometimes with 2 heads. Dean had also said that the witch changed him into a donkey and assaulted him multiple times. He carried his axe and a witch ball, created by his wife, with him at all times, as protection against the witch's power. The reason for the haunting remains unclear. What do you think might have caused this ghost to terrorize anyone who came to the Bell farm? The Myrtles Plantation. Frances and her ex-husband, James, purchased the plantation in 1980 following a holiday they spent there. They were in their 20s at the time and had little knowledge of the property's history. Frances would be haunted with supernatural encounters up until the time they left, more than 10 years later, and her marriage would be over. According to legends, a slave girl named Chloe was hanged at the property in 1823 after she served poisoned food laced with oleander. The lady of the house, Sarah Woodruff, along with her 2 small daughters, were the victims. However, according to some accounts, Sarah and her children died of yellow fever. The ghosts of Sarah and her daughters are said to terrorize visitors up until today. The Myrtles Plantation has seen countless deaths in its 221-year history, some natural, and some the result of violent fights. William Winter, a lawyer who lived in the house from 1865 to 1871, was assassinated on the porch. Rumor has it that he staggered into the house and began climbing the stairs in search of his wife, and fell dead on the 17th step. Employees and visitors of the house today claim to have heard his dying steps on the stairway. Frances claims that Chloe and William Winters are just 2 of the 9 ghosts who haunts the Myrtle Plantation. As with any good ghost story, the Myrtles Plantation has skeptics. There are some who say, for example, that the impact of a single shotgun killed William Winters instantly, therefore his footsteps could not possibly be heard on the stairs. One thing that we know about ghosts is that they don't follow the rules of common sense. The present owners of the Myrtles Plantation have accepted their home's reputation as America's most haunted. Are you brave enough to spend a night in this house? People enjoy haunted houses because they enjoy being frightened and feeling as if they're sitting on the edge of their seats. But it's easy to forget that real haunted houses in the United States are often tied to death and tragedy. Ghosts are souls that remain in this world, and for whatever reason, they're unable to move on. Perhaps proper respect and recognition could help the spirits rest in peace. Thanks for watching our Late Night Top 5 channel. We're a new channel and would love to have your support by subscribing, liking, or simply dropping a comment down below. To watch more interesting late night videos, click the links to continue watching more.